What lurks beyond the veil of twilight? As the sun sets over Middle-earth, casting long shadows across its varied landscapes, there are places where the darkness seems to linger, where the very air is heavy with a sense of impending dread. These are the realms where legends speak of baleful specters, ancient curses, and horrors that defy mortal understanding. Join us as we explore 7 of Middle-earth's most terrifying places, Part 2. The Withered Heath, resting in the frozen northern reaches of Middle-earth, was a land steeped in dread and desolation. Nestled between 2 forks of the Grey Mountains, this bleak, barren landscape was infamous as the breeding ground of dragons. Its very name evoked decay and lifelessness. The soil was infertile, and the skies perpetually overcast, casting an ever-present gloom over the land. This forsaken region was the birthplace of many dragons, including Smaug the Golden, whose immense size, cunning intellect, and insatiable greed made the region perilous. These fire-breathing monsters, hidden amidst rocky crags and windswept plains, deterred even the bravest adventurers. But fire-breathing dragons were not the only terrors. The cold drakes, dragons that did not breathe fire, added to the horror with their incredible strength and relentless ferocity. The dwarves of the Grey Mountains suffered immensely from these beasts, especially during the War of the Dwarves and Dragons. This devastating conflict, which took place in the late Third Age, between the years 2570 and 2589, saw relentless dragon onslaughts driven by their lust for treasure. Notable deaths included King Dain I of Durin's folk and his son Fror, who were both slain by a great cold drake outside their halls. The Withered Heath itself was a realm of bitter winds and drastic temperature drops, where scarce, tainted water sources made survival almost impossible. Its desolation was compounded by the ever-present threat of dragons, whose roars echoed through the rocky crags and desolate plains. The inhospitable environment, marked by its infertile soil and perpetually overcast skies, created an atmosphere of unending gloom and despair. This forsaken land, where death and danger lurked around every corner, stood as a chilling testament to the ancient evils of Middle-earth. The Withered Heath was not just a place of physical peril, but a landscape of psychological terror, making it one of the most terrifying and haunted places in Tolkien's Legendarium. Caradhras, known to many as the Red Horn, and by the dwarves as the Cruel, loomed ominously in the misty mountains, a towering giant whose peak was perpetually shrouded in storm and shadow. This treacherous mountain, infamous amongst the peoples of Middle-earth, was feared for its bitter and unpredictable nature. Its icy winds howled like tormented spirits, and its snow-choked paths turned back even the most determined travelers. The mountain's sinister reputation was well earned. Caradhras was no ordinary peak. It seemed almost alive, possessed by a spiteful will. The dwarves of Khazad-dûm, the ancient city of Moria, whispered dark tales of its cruelty. The very stone of Caradhras exuded a chilling animosity, a palpable hatred for those who dared to tread its paths. Blizzards descended without warning, and avalanches thundered down its slopes, burying all in their path. One of the most harrowing events associated with Caradhras occurred during the Fellowship of the Ring's desperate attempt to cross its cruel heights. As the Fellowship climbed, the mountain unleashed its fury. Snowfall turned into a blinding blizzard, icy winds cut through their clothing, and the air grew thin and treacherous. The party, led by Gandalf, Aragorn, and Legolas, fought desperately against the elements. Yet, it seemed as though the mountain itself was waging war against them, thwarting their every step. Boulders tumbled down with lethal precision, forcing them to abandon their ascent and seek refuge in the dark tunnels of Moria. Legends spoke of Caradhras' disdain for intruders, its peaks said to be cursed by ancient spells. The very name Caradhras struck fear into the hearts of those who lived in its shadow, a grim reminder of nature's unyielding and relentless power. In the dark lore of Middle-earth, Caradhras stood not merely as a treacherous mountain pass, but as a sentinel of doom, where the ordinary perils of mountainous climates seemed infused with a supernatural malevolence. Even the bravest hearts faltered in its presence, and the light of hope dimmed beneath its oppressive weight, marking it as a place where courage faced an ancient and implacable evil. The way is shut. It was made by those who are dead, and the dead keep it until the time comes. The way is shut. The paths of the dead, known as the Haunted Road, wound underground through the desolate White Mountains, where the boundary between the living and the dead blurred ominously. This cursed path was born of a solemn oath by the King of the Mountains, who swore fealty to Isildur and pledged the men of the mountains to aid Gondor, but betrayed their pledge in a time of dire need. As punishment for their treachery, they were condemned by Isildur to linger there, their spirits bound to the mountains until they fulfilled their oath. Located in the shadow of Mount Mindoluin, the air in the White Mountains felt oppressively heavy, as if the spirits of the Oathbreakers themselves weighed down upon the living. Ghostly whispers like icy tendrils echoed through the narrow passages, carrying the anguished cries of those who perished, unfulfilled. Shadows clung to jagged rock faces, their movements unseen yet keenly felt, stirring a primal fear in the hearts of any who dared to pass. Legends whispered of the horrors awaiting at the path's end, the Stone of Eric, where the oath was sworn, and the place where the Oathbreakers awaited their chance for redemption or eternal damnation. Their ethereal presence turned the ground to ice, thick with the weight of centuries-old sorrow, freezing the very hearts of those who beheld it. Aragorn, the rightful heir of Isildur, accompanied by the stalwart Legolas and Gimli, as well as the Grey Company, dared to tread the paths of the dead during the War of the Ring. With the courage of his noble bloodline, the heir of Isildur invoked the Oathbreakers to fulfill their ancient pledge to aid Gondor in its final hour of need. Their journey was a harrowing odyssey through a labyrinth of treachery and dread, navigating terrain haunted by vengeful spirits that hungered for release or revenge. The paths of the dead are a terrifying testament to the solemnity of oaths and the weight of unfulfilled duties. There, mortal courage faltered in the face of spectral torment, and the living trembled amidst chilling reminders of promises forsaken. It is a place where the veil between the living and the dead is perilously thin, and where the consequences of ancient betrayals cast a suffocating cloak that even the bravest souls fear to confront. The Dead Marshes, a treacherous and sinister expanse, lie to the northwest of Mordor, where the land is soddened and bleak. This haunting region, once the site of great battles, is now a place of eerie stillness and decay. The marshes swallowed many of the fallen from the War of the Last Alliance, and later in the Third Age, those of King Ondahur of Gondor and his guard, who were attacked by Wain Riders from the east and driven into the marshes, perishing in the murky depths. The restless spirits of these fallen soldiers lingered, adding an element of supernatural terror to the already haunting mire. The air above the marshes was heavy with a fetid stench, a sickening stink that clung to the skin and seeped into the lungs. Flickering lights, the infamous corpse candles, danced above the murky waters, drawing the unwary toward their doom. These will-o'-the-wisps illuminated the faces of the dead, half submerged in the water, their lifeless eyes staring upward in eternal despair. The marsh itself was a labyrinth of treacherous footing and hidden pitfalls, where each step could plunge the traveler into the depths below. The horror of the Dead Marshes was palpable, a lingering witness to the tragedy of war and the corruption of Mordor. Gollum, Frodo, and Sam traversed this ghastly terrain on their perilous journey to Mount Doom, narrowly avoiding the grasp of the dead and the insidious pull of the marsh's dark enchantment. The marsh's stagnant waters and eerie silence amplified every sound, making the slightest noise a potential herald of doom. The Dead Marshes, where the living and dead coexist in a macabre dance, pulsed with memories of long-past battles. Each step risked descent into depths where the fallen linger, and sinister corpse candles beckon the unwary. This place is a chilling embodiment of Middle-earth's darkest history, where hope and light are swallowed by perpetual gloom, and the living must tread carefully to avoid joining the restless dead. Nargothrond, the once hidden city conceived from dreams of Finrod Felagund, guided by Ulmo, stood as a bastion against Morgoth's darkness in the First Age. Carved deep into the hillsides along the river Narog, its halls were a marvel of elven and dwarven craftsmanship, hidden from Morgoth's gaze. However, it was one of the petty dwarves who helped to build the hidden fortress that began its descent into horror. Mim the petty dwarf harbored a deep-seated grudge against the elves of Nargothrond. In a sinister act of treachery, Mim attempted to murder Finrod Felagund, driven by his hatred and jealousy. This dark deed foreshadowed the greater calamities that would soon befall the once great stronghold. The arrival of the man Turin-Turambar marked the next tragic event in the history of Nargothrond, cementing its status as a place of doom. Turin, in his pride and desperation, convinced the elves to abandon their secrecy and build a great stone bridge across the Narog. This decision, intended to fortify Nargothrond against Morgoth, ultimately exposed its location. Morgoth soon learned of the hidden city's whereabouts, and the mighty dragon Glaurung was dispatched to lead an assault. Glaurung, the father of dragons, unleashed his wrath upon Nargothrond, bringing fire and death. The bridge that was meant to protect the city became the path of its destruction, as Glaurung and his army marched across it, breaching the gates and laying waste to the stronghold. The dragon's hypnotic gaze ensnared warriors, rendering them helpless, while his flames consumed all in their path. Orodreth, nephew of Finrod Felagund and second king of Nargothrond, was slain there at the gates. Glaurung's malice extended beyond the battlefield. He deceived Turin, filling him with pride and rage, leading to the capture and tragic death of Orodreth's daughter, Finduilas, who had loved Turin. Her death was a heavy blow, adding to the city's doom. Glaurung's influence reached its peak with Ninor, Turin's sister. Cursed by the dragon, she wandered the ruins in despair and amnesia. Glaurung's death by Turin's hand came too late to save Ninor, who, upon regaining her memories, took her own life in anguish. After Glaurung's demise, Mim the petty dwarf returned to Nargothrond, claiming it as his own. However, Hurin, Turin's father, found Mim there and, in a fit of rage, slew him. Hurin took the Nauglamir, the famed necklace of the dwarves, from the Horde, setting off a chain of events leading to further tragedy. The Nauglamir's retrieval and subsequent gifting to Thingol of Doriath directly precipitated the next kinslaying, as the dwarves and elves clashed over the fabled necklace. Thus, Nargothrond, once a beacon of hope, became a cursed place. Its halls, once filled with song and light, echoed with the horrors of betrayal, fire, and despair, a testament to Morgoth's relentless malice and the frailty of elven dreams. Dol Guldur, once known as the Hill of Dark Sorcery, stood as a haunting monument in Middle-earth. Situated in the southern part of Mirkwood, this fortress exuded an aura of malevolence and dread. Once the capital of Orifer's Sylvan elves, called Amon-Lank, the hill was transformed in the Third Age for Sauron's treachery to grow. Veiled by dark enchantments and shrouded in perpetual shadow, Dol Guldur became the meeting place of dark sorcery and corruption. Its chilling presence infected the once green and fair woodlands of the Greenwood, twisting them into the haunted realm known as Mirkwood. Within its grim walls dwelt fell creatures and the dreaded Nazgul, alongside orcs, wargs, and other monstrous beings. Throughout the Third Age, Dol Guldur played a significant role in the events of Middle-earth. It became a focal point for the Dark Lord's resurgence, prompting concern among the wise in the West. The White Council, led by Saruman the White, was formed to oppose Sauron's growing power. They launched several attacks against Dol Guldur in efforts to weaken Sauron's influence in the region. The fortress of Dol Guldur stood not merely as a physical stronghold, but as a bastion of darkness that tainted all it touched. Tales whispered of its dungeons, where the anguished cries of captives like Thrain II, father of Thorin Oakenshield, echoed endlessly, a grim chorus of suffering that reverberated through the twisted corridors. Thrain's imprisonment was a harrowing tale of torment and despair, his mind and spirit shattered by the relentless cruelty of Dol Guldur. Within its walls, time lost meaning as he languished in darkness, haunted by visions of horrors and memories of a life forever stolen. His suffering bore witness to the fortress's mastery over fear, a power that reached beyond chains and stone to consume the very soul, leaving behind only a broken shell where once there had been hope and defiance. Even amidst the White Council's hard-won victories that briefly quelled Dol Guldur's terror, The fortress persisted as a stark reminder of Sauron's unyielding malice. Its looming presence against the bleak Mirkwood sky was a constant dread, a dark beacon of the horrors, lurking within a relentless threat of the unending nightmare, awaiting any who dared challenge the unholiness of the Dark Lord. Tol-in-Gaurhoth, once known as Minas Tirith, the Tower of Guard, stood as a grim monument in Belarion's tumultuous history. Founded by Finrod Felagund, noble king of Nargothrond and sworn brother to Beren son of Barahir, this fortress was intended as a watchtower against the rising darkness of Morgoth. However, its fate took a dark turn when Sauron seized it during the First Age, corrupting it into Tol-in-Gaurhoth, the Isle of Werewolves. The transformation of Tol-in-Gaurhoth was swift and cruel. Its towers, once symbols of strength and hope, now echoed with the haunting cries of werewolves, creatures twisted by Sauron's dark sorcery into monstrous forms bred for war. These abominations prowled the labyrinthine corridors and shadowed halls, their predatory presence spreading terror and death throughout the fortress. The air within Tol-in-Gaurhoth thickened with dread, tainted by the foul stench of decay and the lingering curses woven into its very stones. Finrod, renowned for his wisdom and courage, met his tragic end within Tol-in-Gaurhoth's dungeons. Captured during the ill-fated quest for the Silmaril, he and his companions faced relentless torment and betrayal at the hands of Sauron. Bound by his solemn oath to Barahir, Finrod had ventured forth to aid Beren in his perilous quest against insurmountable odds. The valiant king, defiant to the last, resisted the dark powers that pervaded the fortress, grappling with a werewolf in the dungeons to protect Beren. With remarkable courage, he slew the beast with his bare hands, but ultimately succumbed to his wounds inflicted in the battle. Tol-in-Gaurhoth, bathed in perpetual shadow and steeped in the darkest sorceries of Middle-earth, stood as the epitome of terror. Its halls echoed with the tortured cries of captives and the prowling of monstrous creatures, its very presence a chilling testament to the depths of darkness that could flourish under Sauron's dominion. No other place in Middle-earth embodied such malevolence and despair, where the forces of evil held sway unchecked, casting a shadow that lingered long after its fell deeds were done. From the cursed halls of forsaken fortresses to the haunted marshlands where restless spirits roam, these landscapes bear witness to the enduring power of fear in Tolkien's mythos. As we emerge from these dark corners, ponder this. What place in Middle-earth evokes the greatest fear in your imagination? Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe for more spine-chilling adventures. For in the shadows of Middle-earth, darkness holds sway, and the line between myth and reality is often terrifyingly thin.